Essay number 2. The Secrets and Investitures of Pewter and Tin, the Internal Physical Metals. My lifetimes of study and observation have led me to a fascination about shards, specifically the intent of a shard. This is one of the many reasons why Scadrial is a major focus of my studies. It is a system whose history and people have seen a great amount of direct interaction between shard entities and the mortals who live on the planet. The fall of the world of Ash also taught us about the simplistic dynamic of shardic intent, and how the actions of the shard holders are guided along a track until they themselves are less of an individual and more of a force of will. They become a hyper-intelligent concept. In fact, the bonded Spren of Roshar are approximate examples of what I feel a shard bearer becomes. It is a bleeding of the cognitive and spiritual essences into something far greater. The intent of a shard can be extrapolated based on the shape their investitures take. These powers follow laws much like the laws that govern the physical universe. This essay is at the heart of my argument in this matter. It is imperative that the reader understands that the purpose of these essays is to examine the internal nature of the powers found on Scadrial. Within these pages are my measurements and diagrams, but this is more of a dialogue intended to uphold my claims that investiture is patterned after intent. This is a fact that is highlighted in all the magic systems of the Cosmere. In this essay, I will show how the allomantic powers of Pewter and Tin are nearly perfect examples of this manifest intent. These powers are the personification of preservation, which was the intent that was carried by Leraise until the Catasandra. Pewter is the pushing internal physical metal. It seems to be an apt description considering pewter pushes the physical body to its peak and beyond. While burning the metal, the Allomancer will experience an enhancement of all physical aspects of their body. The physical strength and speed are increased by magnitudes, although no muscle mass is actually added. The bones are also reinforced, becoming resilient to severe punishment. Once again, this extra strength does not come from an increase in bone mass or density. There is also an increase in the Allomancer's balance, which compensates for the improved physical abilities, often resulting in a lithe, almost cat-like grace that comes to a pewter arm. This heightened balance and increased speed means that at peak efficiency, an Allomancer burning pewter can maintain a sprint at nearly the speed of a galloping horse. This means that a pewter runner can be clocked at over 60 kilometers an hour. Pewter is the fastest burning metal of all the original 8. Its pure allomantic alloy is a casting of 91% tin and 9% lead. A pewter savant, or a pewter allomancer who has adapted to burning pewter over long periods of time, is hard to make and even harder to recognize. The benefits of long-term pewter flaring are often dwarfed by the physical dangers that come along with doing so. A pewter savant will consume pewter more efficiently and can start healing from wounds at an accelerated rate compared to other pewter arms. However, this constant flaring drives a need for the metal, and if the Allomancer ever runs out of the metal to flare, they can die quite suddenly from the shock. This makes the study of pewter savants difficult for most people are too wary to attempt it, and it would be unethical to perform tests on the unwilling. Of specific interest to me is the infamous Pewter Drak. This is an instance when an Allomancer consumes massive amounts of pewter at a consistently high rate in order to maintain a prolonged but intense burn of the metal. This pushes the boundaries of what we know are the limits of pewter. Allomancers have been known to run for days on one of these burns, moving at a breakneck speed. The longer the allomantic burn goes, the underlying consequences grow steadily more severe. The body seems to understand on a primal level that pewter dragging is unnatural. Many mistings report an overwhelming fatigue and mental sluggishness that accompanies a pewter drag. When the drag is finished, the Allomancer must continue to burn pewter for the next several hours. If not, the Allomancer may slip into a coma, which can be lethal. They also must maintain a high water volume and calorie intake so their bodies can continue to function. Pewter dragging is highly dangerous and should be overseen by other experienced Allomancers in order to help train the mind for the incredible physical strain. My studies have led me to conclude that pewter is the greatest example of preservation's shardic intent, and why I feel this should be the foundation for my claims. Experience and observation indicate that the intents of the shards direct the application of their endowed investiture. In fact, I postulate that by studying the manifestations and laws that govern the observed investiture, that you can determine from that observation alone what the shard's core intent is. For example, I wish you to reflect upon the fundamentals of pewter. Pewter brings incredible physical enhancements to the Allomancer. This effect has a limit or cap. but these powers come with little to no consequence to the Allomancer. Pewter isn't necessarily making you stronger, but rather the strength is a consequence of what it is doing. I have observed that pewter instead produces the effect of freezing an Allomancer's state of existence. While burning pewter, the physical body resists changes down to the microscopic level. The bones don't get larger or tougher, they simply resist change, making them harder to break. The body can sprint at speed for long periods of time, because pewter prevents the body from suffering the ill effects of motion and muscle degradation. The pewter is acting as a barrier, preserving the Allomancer's body by expelling the energy that would normally create these physical changes, and dissipating it into the spiritual realm. This is speculation on my part, but the differences that we see in the physical ferochemical arts display this discrepancy perfectly. As you will see in my future essays, Allomancy uses the Investiture to affect the world around the Allomancer, all the while preserving the Allomancer. The other metallic arts require great physical sacrifice in order to obtain their power. Allomancy's complete dependence on metals fits the observed intent of preservation. Despite this drive for preservation, any interaction with Investiture comes at great risks, as stated above. And just because a pewter Allomancer resists change, doesn't mean that they are unharmed or unchanged by this process. In fact, quite the opposite. But this is apparent to me that the intent behind pewter's power clearly follows the pattern of its shard. This can also be observed in pewter's metallic counterpart, tin. Tin is the internal physical pulling metal. This power creates a heightening in the Allomancer's perceptions of the physical world by pulling on the capabilities of the Allomancer's mind. This enhancement is unilateral, greatly increasing the sensitivity of all the senses at once. Normally this information would be overwhelming and possibly damaging to the psyche. However, it is apparent that tin's ability to change the way the mind works increases its capabilities and allows the Allomancer to remain safe. I believe that this is actually the only true change that tin provides. Reports indicate that tin eyes, or tin misting, does not see anything that wasn't already observable. Instead, they become hyper-aware to all the sensory input that their bodies are receiving and enhances the mind's ability to interpret the information. Tin also provides an ability to see through the mists of Scadrial. The mists are a gaseous manifestation of preservation/harmony's power in the physical world, and thus preservation's arcane abilities are granted an advantage in the mists, most notably with the tin eyes. This ability does come with many downsides. With such a sensitivity to stimuli, the Allomancer is susceptible to any dramatic changes in sensory input. Unexpected loud noises or bright lights can stun and even incapacitate tin eyes. Even with the mental enhancements, the mind can only handle so much data at once. Another cost is the enhancement of pain receptors, which can overwhelm the tin eye. In fact, the tin eye often avoids confrontation for this very reason, for while burning tin, they can be easily incapacitated. Tin savants are some of the strangest invested entities in the Cosmere. The extended tin flare causes the mind of the Allomancer to permanently change. With this enhancement, the mind becomes incredibly capable of filtering out unwanted sensations, allowing for strange abilities. Before the Cassandra, the Lord Mistborn was a tin-eye misting, who became the only documented tin savant on record. He was capable of seeing through cloth, could see stars on cloudy nights, and was even able to hear a man's heartbeat from over 30 yards away. However, if the savant ever runs out of tin, his natural senses are dulled into almost nothing. This is a frightening medical condition that, if left untreated, runs a high risk of accelerated death due to the lack of sensory data. It is my opinion that such savants be discouraged, although it must be admitted that the supernatural senses it creates are fascinating, and the effects of such abilities are powerful if executed properly. Tin also reflects preservation's intent. With the exception of the savant, tin does enhance an Allomancer without altering the individual. Again, we can see that the tin does not make the individual's eyes better, or change the physical characteristics of the tin eye's ears. Instead, the changes are all about the capabilities of the mind and the ability to interpret incoming data. This preserves the Allomancer while also increasing the Allomancer's ability to survive. Savants challenge this assertion, but I believe that the metaphysical changes observed in the Lord Mistborn's life were caused by a fundamental law of investiture, rather than by the intent of preservation. I have observed in my years of travel that those who channel large amounts of investiture for long periods of time are physically altered by the power. This is a study outside of my focus, but such examples of metaphysical changes can be seen in the Soulcasters of Roshar or the Dakora cell. Prolonged and persistent investiture creates changes in individuals even when the intent was never to produce such changes. In conclusion, the manifestations of Pewter and Tin are perfect examples of the manifestation of Pewter's intent, the guiding nature of the shard. The other abilities of Allomancy also reflect this, but none as starkly as the internal physical metals. Following this article are my estimations of Pewter's limitations and flaring capabilities, as well as the personal annotations made in the Words of Founding concerning the effects of a tin savant. Postscript. This essay is of particular note. Perhaps we have been looking at these metals in all the wrong light. If we can, I desire to conduct more tests of this nature on Kandra blessings. I am curious to see if the Kandra can become savants. Until the next letter, Elsric. How's it going, guys? Thank you for joining me for the latest Letters from the Cosmere. As you know, this is part of my Allomancy series, and I'm going to be diving a lot more into theory. I plan on doing Allomancy, Hemalurgy, and Ferrochemy in this arc. It obviously is going to take some time, so I imagine that this will be kind of sprinkled in amongst other topics. I'm going to be covering everything from the Cosmere as far as I can, and so I hope you'll join me for that. But once again, please, thank you for all the artists who submitted their work, and please make sure that if you're watching this, that you go and you check out their links in the description. They're going to be the first things you see. Go find them, tell them how much you enjoyed their art, and see what else they have. A lot of times I'm sharing some art that usually is either appropriate to topic or the things I've gotten specific permission to share, but they often have a lot of other good work too. So make sure you go and see them and go and share your love with them, because we honestly wouldn't be able to enjoy this series as much without their help. So thank you so much once again. Thank you for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you around the Cosmere.